Hello and welcome to the Canadian Health Records Database from Group 3R.
Enough. Hello, I'm Adam Baker. I am a computer science major.
Hi, I'm Johan Dole. I am a computer science major also. In the fourth year, and I'm going for my poli-sci minor.
Hi, I'm Aluishan Fasharanti, and I'm also a computer science major.
I am Jeff Fulster. I am a returning student. I did a lot of music stuff before at the U of S, and now I'm majoring in computer science and minoring in math.
And I'm Sam, and I'm a fourth year computer science major.
Patient records have already been done in Canada and Nova Scotia. That's what most medical professionals use. However, there are some limitations to this system, mainly provincial and territorial borders, and there are also many companies working on e-records, and many of the profiles are locked by province or provider. For many Canadians, if you want to transfer your records to another doctor, there's a price attached to that. The CHRD looks to change that by creating a centralized database for all Canadian healthcare records. Whether you are visiting another province, your healthcare records should travel with you, and that's what the CHRD aims to do, make your healthcare records accessible by everyone on your healthcare team. Whether you're seeking primary care or emergency care, you shouldn't have to worry about your records. This system is designed for healthcare professionals to quickly access and edit nationwide health records, while also allowing patients to view their own records.
So, our project is based on an MVC design approach, and our front end uses React JavaScript, and our back end uses a Python Flask server with an SQLite database attached. Finally, for the purposes of acquiring the names of various drugs, we used the RxNorm API. We chose these technologies, save for the API, because they are simple and easy to use compared to other technologies. Given that this is a prototype, if given the chance to make a full product, we would want a more robust system, and our likely first move would be to move to a full SQL database instead. SQLite is good, but it's not as robust as a full SQL because it's SQLite.
So, as Johan said, we developed sort of an MVC type application, more or less a database application with React Client and Python and Flask backend. Looking at the diagram on the left, I'll briefly go over some of the architectural design. So, we have a database controller that creates a connection and handles database gets and sets. There are many data types we have developed involved in the patient record storage, which I'll get into in a minute. The controller is able to insert these individually, and then when requested, compile all of that information into a patient profile object and return it to the server. That object contains all the relevant patient information, which also has helpful methods already built into the data types. The data types help simplify otherwise complex information and allow us to structure the database in a neat way and make other development easier. The Flask server makes calls to this controller and can provide the React client with necessary functionality it needs to interact with the database. There also exists a user object that provides relevant information to the system in terms of what that user can access and also assists in user login. Finally, there's also a system logging feature that will help us in end-to-end testing down the line. However, it is yet to be implemented.
So, throughout our implementation, we were met with several technical problems. Our original database controller design was flawed. It failed to adequately interact with the database, so we had to make some refactorings before moving on. We had limited knowledge of databases, servers, and web-based programming in general. This meant that we had to learn separate languages and implement them synchronously to meet deadlines. Communication between team members is obviously a large part of a group project. In our current global predicament, communication over implementation specifics was difficult and resulted in different conventions. We also had some issues with command line packages and modules. We were able to resolve these issues, but doing so took more time than we had planned.
Okay, now on to the testing overview and report. Our frameworks that we used to test our Python was PyTest, and for JavaScript it was Jest. So the idea for our Python testing was to have a test file for every module, which might contain like 1 to maybe 4 classes. We had to test every function that was in a class. Most of these ended up being just kind of getters and setters anyway, but we tested those. We found that like for Python especially, it's important to use testing because of the dynamic typing. So like an example where that comes in handy is we had a patient profile class, and it depended on a few other classes, and the members of these classes were like dictionaries, and there was a lot of key pair values involved. And the IDE won't tell you if like a dictionary key doesn't exist. So like for some getters, we had like the wrong class being called like in a few spots. So it was like a non-existent member. And so the test file would discover stuff like this for us so we could change it. As far as like JavaScript goes, we didn't get around to doing much, but a lot of it is like sort of graphical user interface stuff. And that stuff is kind of harder to test using code. So it involves a lot of visual inspection too. So yeah, and here we have a little example of kind of the PyTest syntax. You can see it. You define a function that it starts with the name test, and then you give a little, you assign your variables, do all that stuff, and then just assert that expected value equals the results of that function.
So currently our database controller and server don't have full communication with our React front end. We have most things, a lot of the features working on either side. We just don't have a lot of the connectivity implemented at the time of recording this. So I'll just give a demonstration of some just kind of command line stuff, or I guess it's just writing outside of this class here with this database controller. So this just consists of basically connecting with the database, SQLite database, and getters and setters for all of the data types that we implemented. We had to implement data type like allergies, medications, name, etc., just because it's somewhat complex data. And then upon setting that data, sending it to the database, it can be reconstructed into a patient profile object, which contains all of the relevant patient information and methods to manipulate that information. And so just to start, I've instantiated a controller here, a demographics object, which that's just like sort of patient information, like name, age, date of birth, whatever, family history. And yeah, I just sent that object to the controller along with a dummy health number here. We use health numbers as IDs because they're unique. And so I could just run this and we should get back, yeah, a few things we sent in there. And all of this great stuff here, I'll just quickly uncomment that. So same idea, instantiating a few of the data types we created, throwing in some values, and then expecting the controller to basically put that in the database, take it back, and compile it into the object that we can do some of these things with. So here would be the new patient object. We could print the billing code, we could print the medications list, we could print the notes or whatever, any doctor's notes that we appended. So same thing, I'll just run that. And there you go. We got sample billing code, one of the drugs. This would be a note with the date, author, and body, etc.
Hello, hello. So, as Sam explained, we don't currently have any connection between our React front end and our controller server portion of our project. But nonetheless, I have some React skeletons, as I like to call them, set up. This is our web page so far. So as you can see, this is a React app, and this is the login page for our website. So we don't currently have a forgotten password implementation. If I press that, nothing happens. But if I can input something to username, password, and log in, and it brings me to this demographics page of this random patient. All this information wouldn't be there usually. This is just filler for now. If we wanted to, say, add a new note to John's profile, we would press new note. You can insert some text for the note, add a diagnosis, and post. For any requisition forms to different staff, for like blood work, for example, you want FSH, LH, or SDI blood work, request it, and request has been submitted as instant feedback. For imaging and ECGs, however, we don't currently have much besides just this instant feedback. We'll probably be able to add something else there though at some point within the next week. Then moving on, MD searches. First you select a specialty, say oncology, search, and it would bring up this doctor choosing list, which would be all the doctors that are of oncology. Right now these are just filler doctors. I always like Dr. Money, he's my favorite. Then we press search, brings up the doctor's name, his specialty again. Then you add whatever you want to add for the reason for request, and then you request it. Then finally, prescription. You can add some sort of medication with dosage. Let's say Adderall for 1 milligram. I don't really know if that's that much. I don't really do the whole pharmacy thing. Then you can press request, and it shoots off to whomever is supposed to get that. So that's what we have so far. There's also a logout button, which brings you back to the login page. Things to add, we'll have to add a patient search page, which, to simplify it, is when a doctor logs in, it doesn't just bring you to a random patient. The doctor has to search for a patient using the patient's health card number, and then if that health card number is in the database, it brings back the patient profile and displays it with all those demographics as I showed before, all these ones. But that is to be implemented once our controller has been implemented with our React, which will happen within the next week and before the due date. Nonetheless, thank you for watching. This is the Canadian Health Records Database.